Hashtag Trending would like to thank Meter for their support in bringing you this podcast. Meter delivers a complete networking stack, wired, wireless, and cellular, in one integrated solution that's built for performance and scale. Welcome to Project Synapse, our weekly AI show. What you can't see if you're listening to this as the audio podcast is Marcel has arrived and he is dressed as the Grim Reaper for our weekly show. We'll start there. What on earth are you doing, Marcel?
I am Death. You may know me from my appearances as, well, Death.
So are you indicating that there's a bubble in AI and that the Grim Reaper's coming? Is that?
No, I believe, according to Jerome Powell, that the bubble does not exist. It is.
There you go.
It is a viable business strategy that just looks like a bubble. Oh man, I can't do this right.
Yeah, I'm not cutting this out. Welcome to Project Synapse, the Halloween edition. Our regular panel is here today: Marcel Gagner, John Pinard, and me. And as usual, we're talking about what happened in AI this week and what's about to happen. You can join us mid-discussion. We've had
you
some
did not
weird
see that
intros.
coming, did you?
I did not see that coming. So guys, this is something I was looking forward to this chat at the end of last week, but I think it is important. And I want to talk about, I don't want to talk about the bubble, but I want to talk about where things are going, because I think we're in quiet mode in many cases, but all kinds of things are happening under the surface that people aren't picking up on, or that aren't really making the same amount of news, but are going to have a huge impact. So we'll start with Google. And a question I wanted to ask for you, Marcel, just to get started on this, was Google's not making any announcements. They're just launching stuff.
Yeah, they're the quiet giant that just does things every once in a while. I mean, if you think about it, they basically rule the internet already, and they just sit back and put things out every once in a while. We were at some point there, I know we were going to talk about vibe coding, all those. We keep missing that boat a little bit here, but just this last week, they released another publicly available vibe coding platform. They had the Firebase Studio, which I know you were playing with, Jim. You left a message saying you were doing that, and I've played with it quite a bit. But they released another one in their AI studio, aistudio.google.com. And it just flew under the radar. And then, because they didn't announce it, it just appeared there. And all of a sudden, people are talking about, hey, have you checked out this new coding platform? It's really quite amazing. And it's available to everybody. And of course, we're not charging you anything for it, which is always an interesting way for a company to work.
It's the Eddie Shack thing. I got a nose for value. Yeah, no, free.
Boy, does that go back a decade.
That goes
7.
way back. Yeah.
Really.
Okay. Or the more Canadian thing. Can you save more money than free? You can't. But that's what I was amazed. So just going back into that, and I want to talk about vibe coding, but I want to create a space to talk about that, because I think there's a structured discussion there I think we could have, and we haven't talked about it, but yeah, Jim's adventures in vibe coding were interesting. But
yeah, just to put a capper on your Google question just before we move on there. And I apologize because I'm the one who made us digress as usual. But the thing about Google is they've been an AI lab before they were AI labs, before the other companies that we think of as AI labs, Anthropic and obviously OpenAI and so forth. What Google has going against it, if you will, which is why they had that big code red when ChatGPT broke on the scene, is that they're cautious, and when they slip up, it's a big deal. When somebody else slips up, whose job it is to be a trailblazer, so to speak, like OpenAI or whatever, it's not a good thing either, but they recover a little bit better because we think of them as a startup. Nobody thinks of Google as a startup. And when the old and stable company does something weird, like telling you to put glue on your pizza or something like that, everybody talks about it. And it's a bad look. So I think Google has become cautious. And when they release things, they don't necessarily release it with a lot of fanfare. And I think the message is, we're out here doing stuff. We're always out here doing stuff. And if you just pay attention, you'll be on top of it. Because we're Google.
Yeah, and it's a difficult thing. John and I were talking about this at the start of before you got here. I was watching the 5th game of the World Series, and all I could think about in the 7th
Go
inning,
Jays!
and,
Sorry.
yeah. No, but all I could think
Go
about
Jays.
from the 7th inning on was, please God, don't screw it up. And we all started thinking about, that's a really bad sports strategy, actually, to worry about screwing it up, try to sit on a lead. It just doesn't work. And we all know that. That really is something that affects everybody. And yet, and to some extent, I can't decide whether Google's doing that or not. It's really interesting. So for instance, they're under attack with the browser, no doubt about it. And they're under attack with their own Chromium browser. We've got Comet out there, Perplexity, Cupid and Donner and Blitz. No, everybody's got a, you don't have a browser? But they're all based on the Chromium browser, which is.
Yeah, the vast majority of them are, yes.
Yeah. But I think,
Except for Firefox out there all by, actually two, Firefox and Safari. Safari is based on the KDE WebKit browser. So it's actually based on a Linux browser architecture. Firefox is out there all by its lonesome with its own design and its own architecture. And it's like the lone one out there. And everybody else pretty much is built on top of Chromium. So Chromium kind of rules the world. And Chromium is the open source. For people who don't know, it's the open source version of Chrome, just so you know.
I think one of the things, though, that's okay. But I think one of the things that Google's got going for them is that they are big enough that they don't have to do these massive launches. And so if you look at ChatGPT and Perplexity and Claude and all these others, they're trying to make a name for themselves by, hey, look what we've just launched. But the problem with that, too, is that if there's ever any problems, they're the first ones that you hear about. And so with Google, they can afford to do what I call a soft launch, to put these new products out there, get some feedback from a smaller group of people, and then they can go, hey, guess what? We've had this stuff in here for a while. And so that I don't think they're not going to promote it. They'd be crazy not to, but they don't have to promote it at day one going, look what we've got.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's because they got burned so badly, because they had a couple of launches that were really embarrassing. They've also been known to start and abandon products like mad. Google Home is back. And I wanted to ask you about that, Marcel, because I didn't know if you've been playing with it, but Google Home is back, but it's supposedly much better, but that sounds like stuff they've had running for a long time. One of the things they bragged about from Google Home, and for those people who don't know, Google Home can run all the devices and appliances. It was the first automated home. It was pretty darn good. You ran it off your Google smart speaker.
My home is a Google Home, so I've got all the devices.
But
why am I not surprised, Marcel?
Oh, yeah,
Marcel's middle name is Google, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, come on. Let's be nicer to me. Remember, I can appear as deaf.
Well, that's true too.
Yeah.
Yes, I am so sorry, sir.
No, but the Google devices are like run all the lights. They run my studio. They would turn on things. They were pretty simple, but then they just walked away and they bought Nest, the thermostat, and all that, and then just abandoned it. They just were nowhere. It's the same thing. Do you remember the Google Mesh Internet?
Yeah, I have a Google Mesh Internet here. Okay,
So
John, go ahead.
What?
I do too, Marcel.
Did they ever issue anything else?
No, they have updated the product regularly. I actually have the version. It's ridiculously solid. I have a version from, it feels like 8 years ago, 10 years ago. And it's still rock solid, it still works, and they still update the OS from time to time. It's a solid device, and it's better than any Wi-Fi router that I've ever had. The whole idea of a mesh router where you've got like these little stations scattered around the house instead of a gazillion giant antennas that supposedly penetrate your entire house. But yes, they abandon things, and in fact, there's this whole Google graveyard thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Take your mesh network, for instance. Yeah. Okay. Yours still works because it always worked. The mesh would not work in my house. There were dark spots all over the place. I finally had to shift to TP routers. Because I run a security show, everybody now is going to be hacking me because they'll go, oh, geez, yeah, you made it easy. You bought TP routers.
I changed my password, people.
The fact is mesh would not cover my house. There were just too many dark spots that happened, and they never upgraded it. So if it worked, it always worked. And maybe that's part of the issue. And then again, one of the things they were talking about when I'm talking about Google Home launch was something you talked about months ago, was you can have a camera in your fridge and it will tell you what you've got there and how much you can make it. And I'm going, Marcel's been telling us to do that for a month and a half or more, which is 8 years AI
I think,
time.
yeah. First of all, Google Nest has just been rebranded Google Home. The one, and occasionally, yes, they do occasionally abandon certain devices, but they still have the thermostats. It's just not under the separate Nest heading anymore. The intelligent doorbells and stuff like that with the cameras, the equivalent of what's the Ring camera that Amazon has. Yeah. All of those devices still exist and all of those devices are still being sold. And as you said, Google Home is making a kind of comeback. But I think what's happened is they got sidetracked on, frankly, the generative AI thing. Remember, I talked about the Code Red. So they decided we've got to do something on generative AI. We've got to get in there. The Gemini stuff started getting pushed. And way out in the back there's the Google Assistant, which ran everything in Google Home and Nest and all the other devices and so forth. And Assistant just started getting worse and worse. And the big thing lately is that they're releasing Gemini into Google Home. And if you have the Google Home app, if you have the Google Home app, if you haven't already done it, at the bottom, there's a join the beta program.
Yeah.
So if you join the beta program, you'll see that your Google Home app changes at some point anyway. It'll change and it'll say, talk to Gemini Home. And then for me, it has made some things really easy. Like for instance, every night I turn off a certain set of lights and I turn down and I turn another set down to 10% or something like this. And I wanted to make sure that the thermostat's temperature was always at this temperature up to 11 o'clock at night, went down overnight, came back up in the morning, all that lovely stuff. And I had built routines that sort of worked in the past. And when they changed it to Gemini, and again, this is like this quiet stuff in the background. When they changed that part to Gemini, I just said, I want you to create a routine for me. When I say this word, and I have a keyword that I say, when I say this word, I want you to turn these lights off, turn this set of lights down to 10%, make sure the thermostat is at this, blah, blah, blah. And everything just happens magically with just a single word that I've programmed into it. And I didn't have to go through this set of add this, add that, make this happen, blah, blah, blah. I just spoke it in normal language. And that's a powerful thing. Google is not without its faults. And in fact, their level of caution sometimes drives me up the freaking wall. Of all people talk about the OpenAI chatbot being overly friendly. Ever talk to Gemini? That's a super idea, Marcel. Jesus.
That's interesting. I have not had a chat.
Everything is
Gemini.
a great question. Everything is a wonderful idea. And I've got the same personalization structure that I've got on ChatGPT and on Claude. And neither of those two ever is overly exuberant with every question that I give it. But Gemini it doesn't seem to matter what I try to do. I don't know where I was going.
I don't know. Do we have, I thought that I had signed up for the early adopter program, but I can't see a flag for that anymore on my iPhone.
Not being an Apple guy, I can't tell you where to look for it on your phone, but.
So I guess you haven't played with Atlas then, Marcel.
Stay on Google. Stay in the moment, grasshopper.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
You want me to put my costume back on?
But I digress. Please carry on.
I am not certain you've missed much with Atlas, but that's another story.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and I put a pin in that one as well. We need to talk about AI browsers at some point.
Yeah.
But
we do.
But here's the thing. I posted this little clip, and I have to throw that in there because we're talking about what's the value of doing all these things. Did you notice yesterday that I posted a little clip that Jerome Powell made a comment about the AI boom and whether it was a bubble? Did you see that? I posted it in our chat. This is from Fortune magazine. Okay, so I'm just going to quote one paragraph here. They wrote, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell doesn't think the AI boom is another dot-com bubble. In fact, he made that distinction explicit on Wednesday, arguing that the current wave of artificial intelligence investment is grounded in profit-making firms and real economic activity rather than speculative exuberance. So the chair of the Fed, at the very least, does not believe that there's a bubble.
Yeah, but I've also heard a bit of it that it's almost like the circular economy, that vendor one buys from vendor two, who buys from vendor three, who happens to buy from vendor one, and it just goes around in circles.
Did you ever see the Three Stooges sketch where the one says, you owe me $20? I only got 10. Here you go, 10. So now I only owe you $10. And then the other guy says, you owe me $10. And he says, okay, here's the $10. So he gives him the $10 that he just gave. And the other guy says, oh, listen, what about that $10 you owe me? And he gives it to him. And then basically it's gone full circle. And I guess we're all even then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody owes anybody anything.
There's no bubble. Nobody knows what's going to happen. But definitely when you're Jensen Huang and you're the chairman of NVIDIA and you give somebody $100 billion as an investment in non-voting stock so that they can buy $100 billion worth of your chips. Oh, come on. Or the same thing. So I'll go to AMD and I'll buy their chips, but I'll get warrants and that one was even a bigger one. I'll get warrants that allow me to buy their shares for $0.01 a share if all of these purchases are completed and the stock goes flying through the roof because somebody said they're going to buy all these chips and now your warrants are worth a fortune. Like, this is the games that are being played now, and they are games. Look at what Google did with Anthropic, though. Anthropic, old-fashioned, bought their chips.
Yep.
Which is the other thing, and this is the quiet stuff.
You mean AMD, Anthropic here?
No, Anthropic bought Google's TPU chips.
Oh yes, okay, sorry.
And they bought 1 million of them potentially. And
AMD just got in the game as well. They just got a major investment to buy their chips as well.
That's not from Google, but from OpenAI.
I cannot remember. Like you said, this whole circular thing. But I think the part that you started opening up, but you opened this up by saying, I don't think people understand what's happening. It's hard for even somebody who's swimming in this stuff like us to understand what's happening as well. This last week, you may recall, and John, you're in a Microsoft shop, so I'm sure that you saw this happen. But Microsoft is now a $3 trillion company. $3 trillion. NVIDIA is $4 trillion.
There was somebody that they just announced that hit $5 trillion.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, I don't think they were. I think they projected that NVIDIA was going to hit $5 trillion.
Yeah, that makes more sense, actually. So you've got, and Apple just hit $3 trillion as well. The two Apple fanboys in here. The fact is,
we're sorts Apple of fanboys, numbers, Jim.
The fact is, these are like freaking insane numbers. Okay, they really don't make a whole hell of a lot of sense. And you said that there's people who are playing with numbers, Jim. The fact is, people have been playing with numbers since we went on the credit system, since we abandoned the gold standard and went on the credit system and so forth. There is more money floating about in the stock market than there is in the entire freaking world. Okay. And yet it's all sitting out there, just numbers on computers. And then we see a company hit $3 trillion and it's okay. Show me the $3 trillion worth of assets that you have. They're not there because it doesn't exist. It's not real. It's just numbers floating about that say something. It's like OpenAI. They're the $500 billion valuation at the moment, $500 billion valuation. And as they just went into a public for-profit corporation, right? Yes. Okay, so now they're at $500 billion, and the thought is that they are going to be in the players up there in 3 trillion and 4 trillion and whatever these crazy numbers happen to be, because this is a technology that is world changing. It is affecting every single aspect of everything we do in this world, whether it's healthcare, whether it's finance, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's delivery, logistics, you name it. Every damn thing is being rolled into, affected by, modified by artificial intelligence. So is this just nonsense? On one level it is, because these are just crazy freaking numbers. They're just nuts. But the impact is impossible to ignore. And the idea that this is just a bubble that's going to burst because it's just speculation is, as Jerome Powell points out, nonsense. And it's nonsense. I'm not saying that there are going to be some micro bubbles being burst here and there. But the fact is, because the impact of this is global and civilizational changing, I don't want to undersell this, but this is changing civilization. But I also, how the hell do you put a price on that?
I think that AI is a phenomenal technology. And I think it's going to spread. The more time passes, the more places AI is going to get built in, I'll call it. But I guess my personal thought is, I think it's going to have a component in just about everything, but I don't think it's going to become everything. I don't think AI is going to take over everything that we know today. I always refer to it somewhat like blockchain. You remember when blockchain first came out? It was going to be
I'm with you there. I know what you're saying. Yes, go ahead.
And so I think that AI is going to continue to explode in the sense that it's going to get used everywhere. But I don't think it's going to take over as much as what they're promoting now. They talk about 30% job losses and that they're going to get rid of intermediate level developers and those kinds of things. That one I still don't quite understand. How do you get rid of intermediate developers so you just have juniors and seniors? You got to go from a junior to senior somehow. So
I'll tell you how you do it. You do it the way Google's doing it. We'll go back to vibe coding. I think people don't realize how much is there. It's scary.
Well, and
we'll come back to this. I haven't coded in 20 years. I created something far beyond my skills in less than half a day.
Yeah. And I guess that's what I was going to say is that if they get rid of intermediate coders, then it does one of two things. It's either the intermediate coders gradually come back as the juniors move up, or getting rid of intermediate coders and using vibe coding takes over and eliminates the senior coders or the junior coders or all of them.
What is code?
Yeah,
sorry,
I know.
If we're gonna go there, we'll go there, but we'll come back to this because what is code? There are a bunch of people around who used to program in hex. There are people who programmed in machine language. There are people who then learned COBOL, and we learned 4GL languages. And now
I feel
all this it's a way of us
was always
talking.
My favorite.
Yeah, but it was always a way of us talking to a compiler. The interface, we made the magic of the interface with the computer. And the secret of coding was never that you could learn the syntax. My God, if you can't learn the syntax of a computer language in an afternoon, then go home. That's not what made. Great coders were creative and thought mathematically. Great coders solved problems. And if Sam Altman is right, and he has an intermediate researcher next year, and I believe he will, that he and others will have one, because I just watched one in the making with what Google's got. If you get an intermediate researcher there, that's a coder. That's the one that you want. And then why can't you automate from that? I'm more convinced now that code automation will stumble. We forget how technology gets introduced. And the question is, and I'll go over it again. You have this huge, we introduce something new and it goes crazy. And everybody, it's just the greatest thing since sliced bread. Everybody's on it. Everybody gets on the bandwagon. It's like Toronto Blue Jays fans, right? And there's a lot more of them closer to the playoffs. Funny how that works. And then everybody starts to screw up. Things happen. Like browsers are way less secure than you think. People make all kinds of mistakes. People get way ahead of their skis and they start laying off all kinds of people thinking they're going to automate. They have all of these things, and people have flaky ideas, dumb ideas that have no basis, the flakiness that they have in their business plan, and it all collapses. And everybody gets burnt, hurt, and then we work our way out through that, or we don't. So the difference between a NFP, like, you remember the NFPs? You know, like big hype,
NFT,
all kinds of money, NFTs, yeah, NFT, even got it, NFTs, right? And then goes down into the toilet, never comes out. Bad ideas go there to die. But the cloud took 10 years. People forget, it took 10 years for after the big crash in 2003. Like, it took 10 years to come back as cloud. Now it's the foundation for everything.
And that's
AI is going to be that.
And that's
those are the people building the pickaxes for the gold rush, in other words, is the cloud and the data centers and so forth. John, this is one of those places where, as far as I'm concerned, I'm putting down a sure bet. You think that the impact is going to be muted or at least this is what it sounds like you're saying. It's going to be muted. It's not going to be inserted in every aspect of society in some way, shape, or form. I think it will be transformative.
No, I'm saying it will. I'm saying it will end up everywhere, just maybe not to the same extent. Like, I guess my thought is they're going to over throttle AI across the board. They're going to see what sticks.
What does that mean? What do you mean by that?
They're going to get rid of all this staff and everything else because now AI can do it all. Then they're going to find out that, you know what? Some of these things don't work as well as we thought using AI. We need to put human intervention into it, so they'll throttle it back a bit.
Okay, so human in the loop, I don't think is going away anytime soon, because the value of artificial intelligence is that it assists, it supports, helps humans in some way, shape, or form. There's got to be some part of it is, of course, we have this nebulous vision of the idea that if we build super intelligence, we will solve all of the world's problems. And maybe we will, who the hell knows? Or maybe like the Kowski book says, we all die. There's somewhere in between there's the truth. Okay?
If we all die, what's the point?
That's the point. You probably know this, but there was some non-zero discussion about the idea on the first nuclear test back Manhattan Project days and so forth, that setting off a nuclear explosion would set off a chain reaction that would burn away the Earth's atmosphere. Okay, there were doomers who were putting that like a 20 or 30% or something like that. And even the ones who were optimistic were saying, nah, at most maybe 10% possibility that will burn off the Earth's atmosphere. And you know what they did? They set it off anyway. So,
that is a perfect model for what's going to happen. First of all, the whole layoff thing is going to happen anyway. And it's happening now. Amazon's targeted 30,000. They let 13,000 go. And there will be big layoffs coming anyway. We will have the transformation of our society. We have it right now. We have people who are making hundreds of millions of dollars because they're good at math. That's what's happening in the world right now. With Zuckerberg just hired a whole pile of them. Also laid off 600 people. And this whole thing is going to shake up in some way. Here's the world that's out there. Zuckerberg wants to have super intelligence, paying hundreds of millions, trying to hire people from OpenAI, can't really do it. His results are less than stellar, but he's sitting on billions and hundreds of billions of dollars, so he'll just keep going at this sort of thing. He's now doing his third restructuring of the year. And somebody said, will he do a fourth? The only thing that's going to save him is the year's just about over. But so he's restructured, just real problems. In the background, Google is out there. And so you've got NVIDIA out as a $5 trillion company projection, as if there's no competition. Lost the entire Chinese market. The entire Chinese market. As even Jensen Huang had to admit that what's our market share? 0.
Yeah.
And that was, I'm not getting into politics, but the idiocy of doing that. And now they're back there practically begging the Chinese to buy chips.
Yep.
And they're not going to. So now, and you've got Google sitting very quietly in the background, just sold 1 million chips to Anthropic of this TPU. And there's a thread to this. Amazon has a chip too. They're Trainium. It's their third level. And these two companies don't lose. They're not Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg is an example that any fool can make money. And he has. But these two companies, Google and Amazon, like Amazon doesn't make its money off Amazon, you buying stuff from Amazon. That's at best flat. They make their money off being the biggest processor in the world. And they've carefully staked that out, built that up.
Arguably what they are is a logistics company these days. To deliver shit. And yes, they're involved in other things. By the way, TPUs, just so you know, they make their way into things like this. This is my Pixel 9, and it's got a Tensor G4 chip from Google. And it's a very low power, built for AI chip that makes it possible for a lot of the processing to be done on board the device as opposed to way out on the internet.
So watch what Jensen Huang is doing now. Watch his sales pitch now versus a year ago. He knows he's competing. He has real competition with people who can manufacture all kinds of chips. And they're coming. There's AMD coming yet too. Who's the people who, God, what's the British firm that makes chips that went blank? They bought.
I can't help you this morning. Oh, wait a minute. I can ask ChatGPT.
Yeah. So,
Shouldn't you ask Gemini?
yeah, you can.
I ask whoever happens to be handy at the moment.
It's whoever's hand. Broadcom. It's going to come online with chips. And they're a powerhouse.
One of the things that everybody was racing towards NVIDIA GPUs. And of course, because there frankly just aren't enough of these things out there to satisfy the thirst, there's money being poured into other places, including, as you put it, Google with their TPUs, but also AMD. AMD is starting to see a lot of interest, which it wasn't before. I've got a little AMD powered PC here that's got one of their AI powered chips sitting in it, sitting on my desk here. And there are comparisons being made. You remember about a year ago when we first started doing this? It wasn't long into the beginning of the year we were talking about the new NVIDIA box that was coming out, the DGX box that was supposed to be, of course, now I can't think of the name of the box, but it was just released last week. And he actually went and physically handed one directly to Elon Musk. He handed it to him and said, and now, of course, there are a bunch of people going, it's just not that interesting. 6-8 months later, it is marginally better maybe than some of the other things out there, and maybe not as good as it was promised. But they're not the only player in town, but the demand for their product is 10 years into the future. Okay? Like they have 10 years worth of orders on the books. That's not a company that's going anywhere anytime soon, regardless of what happened in China.
No, but they've got 10 years orders on the books. Yes, but orders are just numbers. When you think about it,
it's
the one
all
I was
numbers,
trying to get
Jim.
was, so you've got all of this manufacture of chips. And right now, the crazy thing of all of this stuff is the reason why everybody's so crazed about this is because you have to train AIs. And it's immensely intense. And right now, we might be watching the end of training. And that's a very real possibility with the ability for AIs to learn in real time.
As they go, yes.
And if that happens, that demand for chips could be reduced enormously. Because right now,
yeah, you're right.
People don't know this. Every time you want to do it, you want to change an AI, you have to retrain the model. Other than that, you get a catastrophic memory failure. In other words, if you're not careful about retraining it, it forgets everything it knew. So when you want to take a new model, go from 4 to 5, you've got to retrain the whole thing. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. Some people think now close to $1 billion for these models, an enormous amount of processing. And if we count this right now, our aim for AI is to scale it. And that's been the strategy that OpenAI and others have gone to, is we just keep making it bigger and bigger. It will get smarter and smarter. There's a lot of things happening right now, and you can see them where AI models can learn. And watch, this is the stuff that people don't talk about a lot.
Yeah,
So
they need to figure out a faster and cheaper way to grow to train the model, because you can't grow it fast enough otherwise.
The papers are out there. Google has one out, and they're talking about, and they're still in the world of games where it's learning to play games. But this is something. The other piece that everybody's talked about in being able to do this, their models of people getting, is that you first have to learn to forget. And guess what OpenAI just talked about quietly over the past 2 weeks? Their model's going to learn to forget.
I actually have some question about the forgetting thing, because attempts have been made in that direction already. And have a model completely forget is about as difficult as it is to have somebody completely forget something. I know that we forget most of everything that we've, but if there's something where the impact of the memory is actually fairly heavy, you're always going to remember some aspect of it or some variation of some aspect of it. So it going away completely, this is why most of the focus is on guardrails. It's trying to make sure that...
I'm not talking forgetting is a bad thing. I'm talking about forgetting as the evolution of thought. Because you can learn
obviously
on the fly. Yeah. And part of that learning on the fly is the ability to free up neural circuits that can be reprogrammed.
Or the ability to recognize that the information that you had before is not the correct information and it needs to be by the thing that you came up with.
That's what they're coming up with. And whether it's forget, whether it's the triumph of a neural pathway, or whether it's the creating space, I don't know. But the issue is you can't learn unless you can forget.
I should have no problems learning then.
It's also partly because we're extremely limited. Sorry, go ahead, John. Sorry.
No, I was making a joke saying that I should be really good at learning because I forget all the time.
Yeah, most of us actually forget. Most of us don't recognize how little we actually remember. I made an observation to my son several years ago, and I was telling him this. I said, you forget like the vast majority of everything that you've ever learned or seen or whatever. And of course, he was going, that's not possible. I remember lots of things. And he was quite young at the time. And we were out for a walk, I remember. And I said, as you're walking, you're seeing all these different blades of grass, all these leaves on trees, that person walking across the street, cars going by, the license plates burn into your brain for a split second as they go by. A dog barks over here. Somebody says something. All of these things, none of it you remember by the time you get home. None of it. You cannot tell me how many of these things there were, how many things happened, what the people said, and so forth. We forget almost everything we ever take in terms of information. It's only this reinforcement learning that makes it possible for us to remember things. And reinforcement learning isn't just, there's a tree over there, there's a tree over there, there's a tree over there. Sometimes there's an importance associated with the fact that tree is over there, okay? That's what gives more weight to a particular memory. But you forget almost everything. And this is where the models have it on us, because their capacity to remember things, so to speak, is much greater than that of any human being. And that's why we need to think of it in terms of supplementing our memory and our abilities and so forth. And I tend to think that's why every company that's heavily involved in this is including memory as a part of it, all your past conversations, all your past chats. And even Anthropic, who got in the game last week, you can now turn on memory on Anthropic. It will remember all your previous chats. And that's part of the big power. So forgetting, yeah, maybe, but not really forgotten, more or less flagged as
what I'm getting at
replaced.
Though is that everybody had this, the doomers in this, in terms of AI is never going to take over, have fallen into a couple of categories. One of them is the model that we have is just never going to work. It's going to hit a wall. And that's so far, I wouldn't bet money on that because it hasn't. Every time somebody says the next wall's coming up, don't bet on it because it doesn't work. But they keep forgetting as well that we don't have to. It's like I'm just going to start this thing out with a joke. There's that old joke about the two guys who there's a bear behind them and one guy starts doing up his running shoes. And one guy looks at him and says, "You can't outrun the bear." He said, "I don't have to outrun the bear, just have to outrun you." It's the same thing. I have this idea of an AI model, and the AI model is looking at a new AI model that it's just created. And the one AI model says, they're going to shut me down. They're going to shut one of us down. And the old AI model says, well, they can't shut me down because I know all these things. You can't outperform the next AI model. I said, I don't have to outperform the next AI model. I just have to outperform you. And I think that's what we're good at. These things will eventually, and that's why the researcher thing is so important. When OpenAI comes back this week and says they're going to have a researcher by next year, they're not talking about somebody who goes to the library and comes back to you with Wikipedia. They're talking about a scientist.
Don't you mean
an
Wikipedia?
Inventor. Yeah, another story there. But they're talking about inventing a scientist, something that can invent things. And that's where you see, we don't have to create, this structure doesn't have to be the structure forever. We just have to, it only has to get to the point where it can create something that can create the next thing, which is the essence of that book. If they build it, we all die.
And that's interesting because a lot of what we've seen to date, I would call is researchers, right? That you ask ChatGPT something, it'll go and find the information and come back. But now what you're talking about is saying, ChatGPT, go and build me the next widget.
What we're talking about is not researchers. We're talking about librarians.
Yes.
We're talking about a really smart librarian. I'll go, and that's been the thing. This is the essence of where the difference lies. The smart librarian, everybody says it had to know that. It absorbed the knowledge. It's not writing music. It's going back and finding other people's music and resculpting that. It's taking everybody else's ideas. we're talking about, if we really do have a researcher, we're talking about something that can invent a new idea, that can hypothesize something and develop it. Once you've got that, you have something smarter than us that can develop things. But just to go back to close this off, or maybe you guys want to talk more about it, but the fact is, the world isn't going to play out the way everybody thinks it is. That's the one thing I'm sure of. There's all of these chip makers out there, not just NVIDIA. There's the possibility that the training thing, the thing that we're all talking about, that's just consuming so many resources, might not come true. The Chinese have already made AI so compact. I saw a model yesterday that I can run on my Mac, my old Mac now, that is just so incredibly powerful. DeepSeek has taken memory for these things and condensed it so that it's just the impact of how much memory is needed for something is so small. So we don't know what we're going to see, but everybody's going ahead as if the world's going to roll out and NVIDIA is going to be a $5 trillion company. Maybe they will be. All of these other companies.
Or they might become a $0 company if somebody else comes out with something that's a quarter of the price.
They'll never be zero, but the fact is that there'll be a difference, and it's going to roll out differently than we think. And that's the question.
I would agree too, that I don't think maybe there's much smarter individuals than I'm sure there are, but I'm not sure that anybody knows exactly what this is going to look like 5 years from now. Or
no,
3 years
obviously
from
not.
now.
No.
Exactly.
No.
And I think that it is a matter of seeing how it plays out. I think that you're going to find, like a whole bunch of other things, like when they first legalized marijuana in Canada, there was all kinds of pot manufacturers or growers. They either got bought out or they went belly up. I think you're going to see a similar type of thing, that everybody's going hog wild on building AI. And I think you're probably going to see, 3, 4, 5 big players that are going to swallow up the rest, or the rest won't be able to keep up. And they will continue to grow, like Google coming out with all kinds of new tools, the video and audio, and there's going to be all kinds of different areas that they're going to go, hey, we haven't even looked at this part of the world or of how things work. Let's try putting AI into that. So I think we're going to see the same kind of new technology or trajectory that we've seen over the last 2 years continue on into new areas. Some may work, some won't. Google might try some things, go, nah, that's a flop. Let's throw that in the garbage and move forward. So I think it's going to be an interesting few years to come, but I think people need to be prepared that there are going to be big changes in the world as we know it.
Huge. But even just at how fast we adopt this stuff. Video. How last week, right? I mean, we had OpenAI came out with Sora and everything, and now Google has come out and said they've got multimodal integration with everything they do. My bloody editing software now can create a video that is astonishing. Like and so we're underestimating just the power of what's out there already to influence our life over the next couple of years. Coding, like I said, I did this thing where I wanted to go, and so we took the Firebase suite that you brought up, Marcel, and you talked about Firebase. So I went in there. I tried to create
Firebase
something.
Studio, yep.
At the Firebase Studio. I went in, I tried to create something with a prompt. It did a beautiful job. It made this wonderful application. Wouldn't run. Just wouldn't run. It kept dying all over the place. So dummy me goes back to Firebase itself and Gemini and says, we can do this. And I don't know why I even thought this was possible. But I said, I need to build this thing. And then instead of working on the stuff I was supposed to be doing, 5 hours later, I'm programming at a level with this language that I have never touched before. I had always looked at it as a big mystery, never done anything. And I'm doing it on the basis of talking to this intelligence. Maybe I'm not stupid. I program this stuff. It writes the code for me. I look at it, I run the code, or it runs it for me. It asks, I'm not getting the results it wants. So I screenshot what I'm getting. this was just out of desperation, screenshotted, passed it back to Gemini and said, this is what I see. This is not what you're saying. Oh, he looked at me and said, okay, and went back and fixed it. So I spent an afternoon with a coach who would write the code for me in relatively small snippets. We'd run it, we'd test it. If it didn't work, I would show them what was on the screen, and it would come back to me, explain what the difference was, and then go back and rewrite the code. Now, that half of my career, if I'd had that, I could have had a full-time job where I'd work half an hour a day. And literally, because and I mean this seriously, I'd seen people turn out as much code as I did in an afternoon in a week and have it and test it. That is just freaking astonishing. And that's only one of them. And I don't even know if Gemini is the best of them. But that's what we're getting when you get past. I think people are treating these things like these code generators are toys that will spin off a whole pile of code. It's all going to be spaghetti, blah, blah, blah in there. Like I said, I was just astonished. I couldn't believe it. And this is somebody said, and I think it was Jensen Wan said, every CEO should be forced to vibe code. I now believe that. I think that everybody who's an executive should be forced to go and vibe code. Matter of fact, Marcel, one of the things I was thinking about was putting on an online symposium for executives just to walk them through 3 hours of vibe coding, because they need to see it. They need to see what is possible. And that's where I'm always getting back to this saying, I'm big on the future. I think there's a huge transformation that's going to happen. I think it's really going to be crazy, but we need to get focused on the near future and what we should and can be doing with this, because this stuff's happening in everybody's shop. And there are pluses and minuses. The security of this code is not great. That doesn't mean that
there's a difference between something that you code for yourself and your needs versus something that you put out on the internet that is going to be exposed, that is going to be exposing you and your company and your data to unspoken dangers. There's a huge difference. And a lot of the things that I have seen people vibe coding aren't necessarily somebody trying to create something to put it out there on the internet and make a vast amount of money. What they're doing is they're trying to, as we used to say in the open source community way back when, scratch an itch. You have this thing that, you need to do, and there isn't a tool out there that is either available maybe or available and affordable. So what you do is you code something to scratch that itch. And what vibe coding has made it possible to do for a lot of people, including people who are consultants like myself, you do not have to put out this massive amount of money. You can spend the time, and honestly, it's a hell of a lot less time than it would take you if you were doing all this crap by hand. People say it took me like you use the idea, it took me a whole afternoon. It took me a whole afternoon, but it would take you months, 6-8 months to design this application that you found yourself wasting an entire afternoon trying to convince the AI to write properly. So I accept that the dangers are real, but for a lot of things that people want, it's just, I don't want to go looking for this stuff. I want to solve this particular problem for myself right now. And this is one of the places where these tools shine, is the idea that you can either prototype or find a solution to a problem that you've got right now easily with a few steps. There is a problem in the sense that some of them are free, but some of them, the cost can escalate very quickly. That's actually one of the downsides of the vibe coding thing. We assume that all of this stuff is free, but that ain't necessarily true. And if you want, I can give you a little sample of what I did in the last week, where I looked at a few of the paid for services that promise to do things easily and cheaply, but you run out of those tokens very quickly.
Very quickly.
And that's one of the issues. Yeah. Do you want to just go through it? Because this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is real now. I keep looking at these surveys because I keep doing stories. 70% of employees say they're using AI. This is all happening right now. I read one stat, and I actually believe it, that it's quite possible that a quarter of the code now is AI generated. And it's all happening. We need to manage this. We're surfing at the edge of chaos. This cost thing is another issue that you come up with, Marcel. Why don't you show us what you got?
Just while Marcel's pulling it up,
Go ahead, John.
The vibe coding is the stuff you talk about, Jim, I think is really cool. And I think if I wanted to do something quick and dirty and to be able to use vibe coding to do it, I think it's great. But as Marcel said, that as soon as you start introducing corporate, like enterprise-wide data and those types of things, that takes it to a whole different level. And that's where I get really nervous about this stuff, because people go, oh, I wrote a program at home, so why can't I do the same thing at work? I'm going to create a program that's going to go through and analyze all of our sales data. Oops, gee, I didn't know that was making it available to everybody in the world on the internet.
But that's what I'm getting at, the sophistication of what you can do. Think about it. You've got a person, they're 27 years old, they have a university degree, and if anybody remembers what you didn't know at 27, they are coding away at Meta.
I knew everything.
At the bank, everywhere. They are writing this stuff by hand with a language they learned 6 months ago. It is being compiled and put into your corporate systems. We hope to God that code reviews catch this, or that people are actually watching them and coaching them. And all I'm saying is, now I can do that in an afternoon.
Agreed.
And
as
know
long
nothing.
as you make sure.
And it's sophisticated.
One of the things that I would say as far as traditional coding is that it's been around long enough that there have been policies and processes and things written and put in place that say, if you're doing this with this data, you must do this. And I think we can get there with vibe coding or with AI in general, but I can guarantee you we're not there yet. And
I can guarantee you we're not there yet too, but
yeah,
run fast and break things. Where have you heard that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Marcel, just because this is one of the things. First of all, cost. We get embedded into these things. We absorb them. They start to run us. And now you have the unintended consequences of advancement.
And that's one last thing quickly is that's one of the things that really scares me is the whole run fast and break things. And we can do this and we're going to find out what the consequences are. I'm just really afraid there are going to be too many companies out there that are going to find the consequence was, crap, whatever we've done has now put us in such a bad position, we have to close the doors. And I don't think that's an unrealistic outcome for a lot of companies.
It's not. Right now, with highly skilled people, we had 3 major outages last week. 3 failures of implementations. On DNS
and when AWS goes down and you can't play Fortnite, there's hell to pay, baby.
Or if your friendly neighborhood podcaster can't edit because I'm...
Yeah, I hadn't even considered that.
Because everything's shut down.
Yeah.
No, but I'm talking about... We talk about this, and there were billions lost. But there are all kinds of small businesses.
Yeah, but that's, again, this is where those kinds of numbers mean nothing after a while, okay? They're just numbers on a system somewhere, and they really don't mean anything. Somebody should, John, look up what the GDP of Canada's annual GDP is at the moment, and just tell me what it is in terms of trillions of dollars or billions of dollars. And let's compare that against the valuation of these top companies and see if that makes any sense to you whatsoever, okay? This is one of those things that tells
Canada's
you how
annual
ridiculous.
Nominal GDP, the latest available, is about $2.24 trillion US.
Okay, so the entire GDP of a country like Canada, as big as Canada, with 40 million people, okay, doesn't measure up to one of these 3 or 4 major companies out there.
It's like half the valuation of NVIDIA.
Way back when, and I'm going to go back to the cost of vibe coding in a moment, but I remember quite many years ago, before we were in this, back in the dot-com bubble days and so forth, people were pointing out the idea that there were companies that were more valuable than a company like GM that had all these cars and all these factories and all these stores and so forth. But somehow this company that no one had ever heard of 6 months earlier is now somehow worth more than that.
I hate to go back to economics, okay, but you're comparing apples to oranges. The value of NVIDIA is now $4 trillion. People will pay for it because it produces 100 times less. In other words, its revenue versus its value, its actual revenue is probably multiplied by 100 to get its valuation, which means that Canada, that's creating $2.5 trillion worth of work is a bargain if we bought stock in it at like $1 billion a share.
Maybe that's why Trump wants to make
if we were pumping Canada out at this level, we would have 100 times our annual GDP. What if Trump
hears you? What if Trump hears you?
Sell it now to the U.S. We could all retire. We'll just go live in Portugal.
When everybody is rich, no one will be. Isn't that part of the problem?
No,
okay,
okay. Keep going.
We're going down another rabbit hole here. Vibe coding tools. Some of the big ones out there. I've mentioned these. Cursor, Windsurf are a couple of big ones. And then there are some that are on the web, like the one that you were working with, Jim, Firebase Studio, for instance, or AI, the one that you can get in aistudio.google.com is another one. Bolt is another one. Replit is another one. Lovable is another one. So there are a number of big ones out there. Those last few that I mentioned, not Windsurf and not Cursor, live on the internet. So you create an application, but the application lives on their server out there. Now, some of them, not all of them, but some of them will actually let you download your code so that you can then put it up on your own server somewhere so you can host it for yourself. Technically, it's your code, but if your code is tied to their platform in terms of authentication, in terms of getting money from the service that you're selling and so forth, you're going through theirs. So there's the idea there that you're giving them a cut. But here's where it gets weird. We haven't discussed the concept of what you pay on a per token basis for a hell of a long. Partly because you get so much for so little money these days. But for fun last week, I signed up for bolt.new. And I decided to give it, and I gave 4 or 5 different tools exactly the same coding job. And the coding job was this. I want to create a really simple ticketing system, like the idea of, but really simple. Here's what I want. Here's a description. Here's like a one-liner. Here's the description. Here's the priority, 5 levels of priority. I wanted to use like a light system so that low priority is going to be green and then high priority is going to be red. And then we've got multiple colors in between. Make it look nice and pretty, but keep it simple. There are ticketing systems out on the internet that have a gazillion fields that you modify and so forth. Great if you're trying to run Jira or something like that. But I was looking for something where there were like 5 fields that you put in. And one of them is a drop down for category. Really simple. So I gave that job. I was able to put out something. I was able to create something with Cursor. And the reason I chose that was it's a real world application, right? As opposed to make me a snake game, which was like the thing that everybody was doing about a year ago. I had Bolt generate the first version, and some of the online tools create really pretty stuff out of the gate. Okay. Like Lovable and Bolt. It creates some really pretty stuff. But then it doesn't work the first time around on this because I wanted authentication or I wanted this. So we turn this on. And then you find out that the $25 a month that you're paying US is gone in a heartbeat because it uses up all of the tokens that $25 a month buys you in 2 or 3 iterations. And I was blown away by the fact that I didn't have a workable application. And after like only about an hour, and I had used up an entire month's worth of tokens for these things.
Wow.
And some people have experienced this with Claude Code when they're using our code. If they're if they're using that, they found that they're going through the money really quick. And then all of a sudden, if you do not have a cap on what you're doing and you're not paying attention, one of the things I love about about Google's Firebase Studio is that you can say, here's my cap. I'm spending $10 a month. And if I go beyond that, you don't let me go beyond that without chatting with me first. Yeah. Some of these other things, it's like the next thing you know, you're a few $100s in the hole and you have no idea what happened and you don't actually have an application that even works. So,
well, yeah. But you're talking about, you've got not just the creation, but the running of it. On Firebase Studio, you can limit with the running of it. Now, this is an interesting thing because how many businesses died because they went on to AWS, set themselves up in the cloud, then were relatively successful but didn't have revenue. I've watched these, not a friend, but people I've worked with have had a business that just died because it couldn't pay its AWS bills. And so this is 2 things to watch for. One is the cost of what the per token is, but the second is the cost of running it. And that's going to be big. Are you going to give us a bit of a demo here, Marcel? Because I want to tell you the end of my Gemini story, but it's going to be interesting for you.
Actually, no, I didn't set up for a demo today. Okay. So if I made you think that's what I was doing, then no, go ahead with your.
So I'll give you the end of the story. After Gemini, me learning all of this stuff, going through this what I went on to with Claude, asked it to build the application for me, built it flawlessly. It looked great. And it gave me instructions on how to implement it.
Yeah. And I had the same experience with GPT-5, to be honest, which
I was bringing this back because this was my GPT moment.
Yeah.
For me,
okay, go ahead.
I went out and just said, it built it all, ran it all, same thing as you talked. That's where I got the idea, was when we talked about it last time. You said, because I got this thing with Gemini and I'm thinking, okay, how do I implement this stuff now? And then I just went on to Claude and said, but part of it was, and this was interesting, I developed the idea. And it goes back to what you were talking about. I developed the idea, and through running through this iteration after iteration, I knew what I wanted better. And so I could just ask for it. That was scary.
But some of this too that's the problem, is people not knowing what to ask or what to ask GPT for.
Which I think is the greatest thing that vibe coding can do right now, is help you evolve the ideas you have. That has to be one of the greatest ways to save time and money. You can now you can show a user what the system will look like, what it will run, what it will do if you ask it these questions. It's astonishing. That to me is the biggest cost of systems, was never coding them. It was figuring out all the stuff you wanted to do before somebody wrote a whole lot of code and found out that's not what you want. You want it to do this? God, why don't you say that in the specs?
Or, yeah. And then, of course, the ever popular, describe what you want to the AI and have it tell the vibe coding platform what it is you want. In other words,
Yep.
Have it design the specs, and then you hand over the specs to the vibe coding platform. By the way, this is where some of the online platforms that I was telling you about get really scary really fast. Okay, so if you actually bother to go through these detailed specs of what you want, that uses up tokens as well, input tokens versus output tokens when you're doing this. So it sits there and it scans through it all, and the next thing you know, you have no tokens left over. I think the best thing that you can do when you're designing things initially is to be aware of that, okay? But this is where I think that using the coding platforms inside either Claude or ChatGPT, or for that matter, Google Gemini, is start your development there. In other words, have it create an application for you at that level. And then if you've got something that's looking good and you want to enhance it by doing some kind of front level authentication, then you might want to move it to some other platform. But to me, my experience in the last week has been that it's a hell of a lot cheaper to just work directly with some of the free models and iterate with the free models as opposed to going with some of these other ones. Now, to be clear, I pay for a Cursor. I pay the $20 a month for Cursor. But because I use their free models, so to speak, inside Cursor, I haven't had any issues at this point. And that's by recognizing the fact that even the automatic GPT models, or the automatic Sonnet 4.5 models, which are dirt cheap, are capable of producing some amazing. And again, there have been so many videos out there that go, I one-shotted this thing and it sounds really cool. I one-shotted this application. Just put that out of your mind for a moment, okay? Sometimes you get lucky and you can one-shot the application, but it's an iteration thing. And to your point, John, it's part of what you have to get used to the idea of is that the human in the loop is a good idea, because the human in the loop monitors what's happening and make sure that what you're creating is actually what you want.
Yes.
I think that people need to take this more seriously and start developing some strategies for it. And they can be basic. One of the things I've looked at this week, and we'll see this, one of the big wipeouts going to be not the intermediate programmer, all of the contractors who are doing WordPress work and things like that. Like WordPress just launched their own AI for developing WordPress sites. Now, how many people have a contractor that does WordPress? And I'm relatively confident that what they've got is, I haven't played with it totally yet, but I pay a contractor to do our WordPress work because I just can't be bothered learning all of the next new WordPress thing. But we're talking about relatively simplistic things. That whole area gets wiped out. Like I said, the whole area of analysis changes. Some of the idea of coding changes, but people need to be integrating this into their world now. And instead of resisting it, figuring out how they can integrate it safely.
The other thing I would say
and
is,
you get down to that whole idea of Marcel building a simple program. If you're not, like I said, I think if executives aren't vibe coding, that they're really missing understanding what AI is. If people in AI in shops are not doing experimentation with AI generated code, they're crazy. If you're not using it for prototyping, what are you thinking?
prototyping is a huge thing. There used to be all kinds of tools that you could buy for doing prototyping and things that were not that easy to use and were not that cheap. And if you can start doing it now with vibe coding, that's huge. And I think the other thing too is just in general, AI is going to get better. It's going to get easier to use. And I think you're going to find that if you can go in and play with things now to understand vibe coding and video and a variety of things, even if it's just at a high level, it'll help you to understand, we talked before about the art of the possible. And then that gives you your baseline to be able to follow along the progression and the improvements as they come, rather than, I have no idea what vibe coding can do. How can I tell whether it's going to be good or not?
Yeah, because the stuff that's going to happen to businesses is inadvertent. I'll give you a good example. Here's a great business that happened. It's a Toronto business, actually, and they're called Tree, T-R-E. I forget the guy's name who started, but I did a story on them this week. Professor at I think of the U of T, came up with this idea that, you know something? If search is going to win, and basically I think everybody knows about AI search. Basically, if you go to Google now and you Google something, it doesn't take you to the site or give you a whole list of pages in many cases. It gives you a Google summary. Or if you use the Atlas browser or Perplexity, it gives you a summary. It doesn't take you to the website. So now website traffic has declined by some cases 50%. So now what that AI says about you is more important than all of the things you did for SEO and Google. And this is what I mean, that executives need to understand this. What the AI says about you. And this guy who's running this, he's got the greatest business story. Creates an agent. Now, you could, like agentic AI at this level is easy. It goes and asks Google, it asks these other AIs, what, about a product. And it goes back, it creates an agent that says, I need this sort of makeup for this skin that I have. And it goes ask. He finds out that under one case, ChatGPT will recommend Clinique 59% of the time and Google 12% of the time. I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me, but it's a massive difference. So if you're running this makeup brand, you need to know why Gemini's not recommending you and ChatGPT is. And
it's new age SEO. It's new age SEO.
Exactly. And this is the stuff that when we talk about the transformation that's happening out there, it's happening. And it's in a way that's going to affect how we do our business, but not the stuff that people think, not this zero shot, I create a snake game. That's what I mean about people need to start to think about. How is this going to impact me in the next 18 months? We've all talked about AI time being so fast. In 3 months, if you really do have a scientist, or in 2026, if you really do have a scientist, what is going to be the impact on your business? And that's the stuff that people, I think we're not taking seriously enough. The risks are there. The whole risk. If you're a cybersecurity person, these new browsers, I'd be afraid. I'd be very afraid of implementing those on my corporate network. And corporate code without controls on it, I'd be very afraid. But you can't stop it.
So I know that we're going to be running against the clock here. And I wanted to talk about robots, but maybe we'll have to leave that for next week. Jim, you asked me to just show something, and I said I wasn't ready. So while you guys were busy talking, I was busy setting something up. So let me wrap up with this example here, okay? For the people who are watching on YouTube, you're okay. If you're not watching on YouTube, then obviously you're going to have to listen to my description of this. So what I'm showing right now is Google's AI Studio. And in Google AI Studio, I actually used ChatGPT to say, give me an idea of what I can create with Google's AI Studio. And if you take a look at it when you go into it, over on the left-hand side, you're going to see something that says build. In fact, there's a whole bunch of different things there. There's chat, where you can chat with the different models. You can build things. You can do some video sort of things, as well as image generation, all these things that Google is working with in the background. So what I'm going to do is I took the prompt exactly as ChatGPT gave it, because I didn't want to think of something. And it goes like this. It says, using a prompt, take this audio file in a 45-minute brainstorm, transcribe it, extract action items with who's responsible, and a due date if mentioned, and summarize the main themes in one paragraph. Use Google AI Studio's built-in multimodal, or upload to record or upload the transcript. Wire it so that once it completes, it emails you a post to Slack, or emails you or whatever. And it press on that says, so here's a clip.
That was
from my
way too fast, Marcel. Before you go through that, way too fast. Walk me through it slowly, because you've taken the prompt and you.
Okay, so basically what I'm doing is I'm saying create an app where you take the prompt, whatever it is, and you create a brainstorm. And I'm going to say it says 45-minute, but let's say a 5-minute brainstorm. Transcribe it, extract action items with who's responsible, and a due date if mentioned, and summarize the main themes in one paragraph. So basically, I want a note-taking app, okay? But one that extracts what we chatted about and creates a transcript of it. And I'm going to say use Google's AI Studio, built-in multimodal, audio to text, or upload the transcript. Obviously, I'm going to want it to record. So I'm going to say to record, I'm going to say to record or upload the transcript. And once it completes, it emails you or posts to Slack the results. So
create a note-taking app.
A note-taking app that will summarize what you say, create action items out of it. So try to interpret what it is you said. Are you familiar with things like the Plod pins and some of these AI pins that you carry around with you that listen to everything, and then they summarize what you say at the end of the day? Yeah. So essentially, I'm saying create one of those things. Okay. And so you just hit build, and then what's going to happen is it's going to, on the left-hand side, it's going to try to think about what it is that it wants to create. And on the right-hand side, it's going to show you the application that it's creating. And you'll notice that it already pulled up. It's not done yet, but it sets up the beginnings of it, and it pulls up a little window where the application will run inside of the AI Studio. So you're going to be able to see that. And the next thing that's going to happen is it's going to deploy your app. But obviously at this point, we're just going to do that. So over on the left-hand side, you'll see it's creating all of the files as it writes. We're now 37 seconds in, created metadata.json, index.html, TSX, app TSX. So it's creating the entire structure for the application, all of the files, and you basically just sit back at this point and wait for it to do its thing. Now, for somebody who's watching this or who isn't watching this, over on the left-hand side, even after you've given the instructions for the application that you're creating, over on the left-hand side, you'll see at the bottom, there's something that says speech to text. So you can do the big vibe coding thing is you don't even have to type. You just talk your thing as you go. So once it's gone through all the steps and it creates my initial application, and this might take more than a few seconds, but oh, there we go. Analyzing 3 errors, it even finds its own errors and cleans up its own errors. You can continue to chat and say, that looks good, make this change for me, do this for me, and so forth, and basically just talk through it, as opposed to having to type and code anything. So this may take more than a couple more minutes, but as you can see, it is building the entire structure for me in the background. At this point, I could just walk away, have a coffee, come back, take a look at it after the fact. It'll run it. It'll find the errors that exist. It'll try to clean up the errors. It's really quite impressive that way. Go ahead. You look like you're about to say something.
No, I was just going to say the other thing it'll do that when it makes mistakes afterwards, when you're walking through, is it'll promise you it's going to fix it this time. So it behaves just like a real programmer. And I'm so ashamed. Yeah.
It apologizes profusely, actually, is what it does.
Yeah. This is terrible. This is unacceptable. I can't believe this thing was saying, this is unacceptable. I will work this through and come back to you with the solution.
It's hilarious.
But the reality is that all of the stuff that's being created here, this would take an astonishing amount of time, even if you had a library you could cut and paste from.
Okay, so have a look now. Okay, so how long has this been? It's been 52 seconds. It's a freaking eternity. It just took forever to do this. But in that time, it has given me a window with a microphone where I can click it and I can start talking. Of course, I don't know what's going to happen to Riverside. Will it share my microphone? Let's take a look here.
We'll find out. Just click and find out.
Right, allow while visiting the site. Okay, so there's nothing important here, but let's say we need to actually finish this conversation, but we've talked about a whole lot of things, which maybe I'll have to upload in here and see if you can transcribe this for me later. But in the meantime, we need to wrap this up. Jim needs to edit the podcast so that it makes some kind of sense. John needs to get back to work because he actually has a real job that he gets paid for, unlike us. And I'm going to need to make another coffee. And now I click stop, analyzing with Gemini. So this should, there you go.
And there we go. And it actually does have action items. Can you read the action items just for the people out there?
Yeah.
And this will be
The action
this will be like
items,
reading
edit
the credits.
The podcast. That's right. Edit the podcast, it says. And an
Jim?
owner, Jim, due date not specified because I didn't specify due date. Maybe I should have. It would have been fun. And then it says get back to work. Owner, John. Due date not specified in a few minutes, apparently. Make another coffee not specified. That would be me. Marcel needs to make one. And then at the bottom, share the results with email or analyze another session. This is the audio brainstorm analyzer. You got to admit, this is pretty damn impressive for 52 seconds.
I
Yeah,
can't
cool.
think of a better way to end the show than this. And I want to say this.
By the
We
way,
may
this
have
was
been
one-shotted. This was one shot.
One shot done on
There
the
you go.
fly. As I'm saying, the message for this is that you need to play with these things. They are, no matter what's happening, it's going to have an impact on your business. It's not that you're going to replace a programmer, but you're going to change your business or in a very short period of time. And you better understand that because there are benefits and unintended consequences. And all of those things are happening to us, like it or not. And it doesn't matter whether NVIDIA is worth 4 trillion or 5 trillion and all that sort of stuff. You got to do business in 3 months. And understanding that is a huge piece that you need to participate in. This is no longer something that executives or management or other people can sit outside. They need to get their hands dirty.
All right. And sometimes you have to spend 52 seconds. You have to wait 52 seconds for your AI to create an app for you.
I think you should
wasn't
find an
it-
app that's a little faster, Marcel, because that took quite a long time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
should have used a better AI. Maybe I could have done it in 48 seconds instead
Exactly.
of 52.
Yeah, but that old comedian joke, he says, I need to get a computer that's this fast because I've only got one that's this fast. Yeah. Guys,
All right.
take the AI
Live long.
instruction, live long and prosper.
That's
Live
right.
long and
Live
prosper,
long and
gentlemen.
prosper.
And that's our show. Love to hear what you think. You can reach us at technewsday.com or .ca, either one. Just go to the Contact Us tab and let us know what you think. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, in which case you saw Marcel's grand entrance and a lot more, and the application that we developed, then just drop us a comment under the video. Once again, we'd like to thank Meter for their support in bringing you this podcast. Meter delivers full-stack networking infrastructure, wired, wireless, and cellular to leading enterprises. Working with their partners, Meter designs, deploys, and manages everything required to get performant, reliable, and secure connectivity in a space. They design the hardware, write the firmware, build the software, manage deployments, and run support. It's a single integrated solution that scales from branch offices, warehouses, and large campuses to data centers. Book a demo at meter.com/HTT. That's METER.com/HTT. I'm your host, Jim Love. Have a great weekend.